Okay, so this video is going to refresh you on how to do our code. We're going to need to set up code. We're doing this both for our e-learning day as well as we're coming back and coding our robots with the sub. So we've got our Robotmesh account. We need to get logged into it. If you forget how to log into your Robotmesh account, we go to the classwork page in our classroom. Under introduction, you see Robotmesh account. There's a link there, and you guys will click on that link. And let me log myself out so you can see what it does here. I'm going to log myself out, click back on the link, and it takes you to your classroom page. You find your name in the list for the classroom, enter your password, get logged in. Never fear, if you can't get logged in, you can still use Robotmesh. You just can't save your work, and that's going to really stink for you, and you'll just have to make sure you get all your coding done in the class during the day. I can't reset the password until I get back to class with you. So you can still do your work. You just would need to make sure that you are doing it all in one setting and can't save it and come back to it because you won't be able to save your work. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a new project for our very first one, and your first code that you're going to do for your e-learning day is to code the robot using the joystick. So we're building our robots. When you come back to school on Tuesday, you're actually going to continue to build your robots, and it'll probably be Wednesday, if not Thursday, before we start actually driving the robots, but we need to know how to program it. So we first pick our target. Our target is always the V5, which matches the brain that we're choosing. Our language for this first robot build, we're going to do it with the joystick, and we're going to give our robot a code, and what we're going to call this is we're going to call this first claw. So that's going to be our first claw. Now, depending on how far you've gotten in the setup or creation of your robot, you may have already got your motors set up, you've got them plugged in, you got everything going. If you do, awesome. We can track and see what you've got for your robot. So this robot here, and that's why I've got the camera, if you look at it, we've already got some sensors and our motors that are already plugged in into ports 1 and ports 2. We've got our cables going, so we've got everything plugged in and set up. So our robot also has the battery plugged in. The battery is charged. I can test the battery by hitting the button here. I've got my robot, and the robot is turned on now by hitting the power button. And so we are ready to start coding my robot. Now, a couple of things that I can do. The first thing, if you're sitting in front of your robot and you want to detect the sensors, I'm going to take my USB cable, take the USB end, goes inside your Chromebook. The other end of the USB cable, which is going to be the micro USB cable, micro side, is going to go in the slot underneath the power of your robot brain. And it goes so that the smaller side of it is facing up. So once we plug that in, what we're going to need to do next is make sure that we have all of the plugins for Robotmesh for our Chromebook. So we're going to click up here just to check and make sure the install RMC plugin. So when I click on that, I should get the green that everything is there. If I don't get it, what you'll do is just click on whatever links come up here to get the correct drivers, and it will load it up for you. It takes it about 2 seconds to do. Just follow the instructions, refresh the page, everything is good. So now when I'm here, I hit detect sensors. Oh, let me get here and make sure that I've got this. So this is good. It's not recognizing my my USB cable here. So I'm going to take the USB cable out and I'm going to plug it into the other side. I'm going to hit the refresh button here. All right. We are running into a little bit of trouble, which is okay. We're going to figure that out. Well, this might be a cable issue. If I am not able to get it with this cable, let's try again the other part of it. Hit the refresh button on my options, and what you should see is your brain. Okay, so now what we're going to do is sometimes this happens. So we're going to grab a different USB cable just to test it out and see. So I'm going to grab a different USB cable. The sub will have these cables for you. Same thing, the USB end goes into the Chromebook. The other end goes into our robot brain so that we've got it. I'm going to hit under my options up here. So if I want to see if I'm set up, I'm going to hit my other options here. I do the drop down to see. Now I see I'm connected, so I see the robot brain. Sometimes that happens. The other thing that you can do if it doesn't work, close out your robot mesh, open it back up, and it'll get it. So I'm going to hit here to connect. And what that's going to do is it shows me that I'm connected, and I'm going to hit detect sensors. Detect sensors just tells me where my motors are plugged in, so I've already got it. Now, if your motors aren't plugged in, if you're not plugged into your motors aren't all plugged in and set up, you'll have to set up your motors manually. So I'm going to show you how we would do that. So by hitting detect sensors, all that does is set up and tell us what our motors are. We still have to go in and kind of set them up. But what we would do is we go to the setting window right next to the motor 1, and I hit the setting, and it already selected that it's a motor because it can tell that that's what it is. But if I hadn't detected my sensors, I would still hit that setting button and choose a motor. Now, knowing and tracking where I've got my motor set up, this is going to the right side of my robot. So I'm going to call this right. So I know that this is the right motor. I'm going to hit OK. And then my other one, I'm going to go back in, hit the settings button. Motor's already selected, or I would select motor, and I'm going to call that one left because we only have the 2 motors for us. I actually would have a third motor, which is going to be your claw. Now, this robot doesn't have the claw set up, so I'm going to go ahead and set up the claw on port 3. Now, you don't have to. You could set it up on whatever port you want. Whatever port you set it up on is the port you have to plug into. So on port number 3, I'm going to set up another motor, and we're going to call this motor claw. So this motor is going to be called claw. Right now, I am getting this error is wrong because there's no motor that's set up, but that will go away once we do have a motor set up. So it's giving me this that it's wrong because it's saying, no, you don't have a motor there because nothing is connected. But we do have a claw motor that we're going to connect in and put in there, right? And so if I had a cable, let me show you here. I'll get one. These are how we connect up our motors. So I've got my little cable here, goes into the end of the motor. And once I connect it in, it only goes in one direction. The other cable goes in, and I'm going to put it into port number 3, which is going to give us our third motor, right? And so then when I have got it, let's get connected up again here. Let's see what we got here. Go in here, change this to a motor, claw. There it is. And there it is. Okay, so now we've got our motors set up. You notice that the motors are working because they're glowing red. If the motor is not glowing red, so when I disconnect my cable here, you'll notice that the motor stops glowing red when there's power applied to the motor. So when there's no motor power applied, it will stop glowing red. So this shows you that it's a good motor. The other thing that you need to look at with your motors is how is it set up? So if you look at this motor on the back of it, there is a clockwise arrow, and that arrow is currently spinning this way. So that would be forward for my robot. Now, if I had it flipped over this way, you notice that the clockwise arrow is actually going the other direction. So depending on which way, that's the forward direction of your motor. So if that's going the wrong direction, you don't have to flip your motor over. All you do is we would go back into your settings and reverse the polarity of your motor. You're going to have to do this on one of your robots to see which one it's going to be. If you forget when you drive your robot forward, one motor is going to go forward, one motor is going to go backwards, and your robot's not going to work. So now what we're going to do is I've got my robot here. I'm going to set up and program my joystick. We've got our joystick here. We can program through our axis. We've talked about how you want to do this. What you need to do is program your robot to drive and open and close the claw, lift the claw. So you actually are going to have 4 motors. We're going to have another one here that we're going to put in, which is going to be an arm motor. And this is going to be called arm. So this is going to be our arm motor. And so we're going to set up our arm motors here. So we've got arm, claw, right and left. So what we could do is say, okay, so access So if we use maybe we're going to do the left joystick, and really this is however you want to set this up. So I'm just going to show you, we're going to drive with our bumpers. Left and right are going to be our bumpers to go forward and back. So button L1 is going to be forward, and I'm going to make that, so that's going to be my left motor. Button L2 is going to be my right motor, so that's going to be forward, and I'm going to make that my right motor. And then what I'm going to do here is button R1, I'm going to make that be reverse. Oh no, button L1 is the top button, L2 is the back button. So this needs to be reverse for my left motor. So L1 is the top motor. So it would be like this, L1, L2. So L1 is going to be forward, L2 is reverse. Then my R1, make that forward, motor right. And my R2 is going to be reverse, motor right. So that's going to be my reverse. My motor's going forward and reverse. Then what I can do is say, okay, I want to do the left joystick. And if I'm looking at my joystick here, so this is either my up and down axis or whatever axis that is. I believe that's going to be axis 2 on the joystick. I'm having a hard time seeing that, but I'm going to say that that's axis 2. I'm going to add an action, and so I'm going to make this linear control for my claw motor. What that means, what linear control means, you have two options: linear control and joystick control. Linear control will make your, as you push a little bit, it'll go a little bit. You push a lot, it'll go a lot. Arcade will make it so that your motors will drive like a joystick, like a single joystick robot. So when you push right, the robot will go right, push left, it'll go left. Claw can only go up or down. So you only have the option of the linear control. And we're actually going to make this our arm. So the arm is going to be up and down. Now I could change and do my linear control on my other axis, which would be axis 4, I believe, is the left-right axis. And I could make that to say that that's going to be linear control for the claw. So what I've got here saying is that on my robot, my joystick, when I'm driving it, let me find it here. Oh, I'm sorry. It should be axis 3 and 4. So I'm going to change this. So axis 3 is up and down on the left one. So I am going to exit that out, and axis 3 is going to be either linear control for our arm. So axis 3 is the up and down, and then axis 1, I'm going to do that. Axis 1 is our left and right on the right joystick. So if you look on here and you can see that it's got the little red lines on there, so you can see what they are for the joystick. So axis 1, we'll make that linear control for our claw. And so what we've got here now, what I'm saying with my joystick is when I push the left and the right forward buttons, it's going to go forward. It's going to go backwards. This is going to raise and lower my arm. And then when I push left and right, it's going to open and close my claw so that I can drive my robot. Once you're ready and you've got this all done, what you're going to do is hit the option button. Make sure that you're connected to the robot. Your project is here. We're going to choose our program slot. Remember, there are maybe 4 on your team, 3 or 4 on your team. Each of you picks a program slot. There are 8 slots for the program. You're going to remember which program slot is yours, and all of your code will go into your program slot. So you guys will have to talk about how you do this. When you can set it whatever you want now for the e-learning day, but you'll set it you'll change it when you get ready to load the code onto your robot. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to load this onto slot number 4. I'm going to hit OK. Then I come up here to the top where my code is. I'm going to change this to the download button. And what the download button does is it'll download it all directly to the robot without running the robot. Now, what we want to do is make sure that we are holding on to the robot when we download the code. There are rare instances where the robot might take off if we've got it and we're loading the code on it. Keep all your fingers out of the way, away from the motors. We don't want the robot anything to happen. So I'm going to hit the download button. It's compiling my code, downloading it. The code has been downloaded, and we've got it. So now what we're going to do is when I unplug this, I go over to my robot here. And now on the screen of my robot, and I'll flip this over so that you guys can see it a little bit better. So on the screen of this robot here, we can select what we want to do for our code. So I hit the power button to go back, and the power button will always go to our home screen. Or if our robot is turned off, I'm going to start it from the off position here. We've unplugged all of our USB cables, so we don't have anything. I hit the power button to turn the robot on. When the robot cycles on, I have my program slots. So by default, you see the first 3 program slots that you've got. If I click on the program menu, I can see all of the slots. So this would be my slot. So I saved mine into program slot number 4. So I click on program slot number 4. I'm going to hit the run button, and that's going to start my program. And my joystick and everything is ready to go, and I'm ready to get going with my robot. Now, when my joystick is on, I should be able to control my robot. But look, it's not working because it's not connected to my robot brain. So what we need to do is pair our joystick. So that's a pretty easy thing to do. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hit this power button once to go back to see my screen. I'm going to hit stop. I have to pair my joystick. So what I'm going to do is take any cable that's plugged into our motor or plugged into our brain, and we're going to plug it in to the top of our joystick controller. So I'm going to plug it into the top of my joystick controller on either side. And what you're going to notice is on the screen, you're going to see a joystick that shows that it's linked up. So now that paired the joystick. When I unplug this, it should go and show that we've gone to wireless. Now I know that I'm connected wireless for 2 things. One, if you look here, you can see that my wireless radio has been connected, is flashing red. So I know that the radio is working, and we have got the robot. So I'm looking here at this, and let's see here. Where is my wireless radio here? Right in here. Right in here. See, the radio, you have to have this connected, and it's flashing red to let us know that we're getting a signal. And we can also see on the screen that it's connected in the top right-hand corner. So now I'm going to go back. I've selected my first claw program, and when I use my buttons, my robot will drive forward and back with the buttons that I made. Claw is going to go up and down if we had the claw attached, open and close for the things we've got. So we haven't got our claw attached on this one yet, but when we do, we would put the claw in, and our claw would go up and down. And that is your first code for the robot.